Hi everyone, this is Striker here and welcome to episode number 3 of my Redout Advanced Strategy Guide series. In this video, I would like to showcase my personal best and currently world number 2 lap of the Ghibli track in the Cairo location. The title of today's video is Strafe, Rattle and Roll, and I believe that in order to achieve the very best times in Redout, we must understand the nuances of strafing. Not just strafing to achieve better turns, but strafing to achieve better speeds. If you're curious, please stick with me as we watch the footage of this lap and then review in slow motion. So now that we've watched the footage of this lap, I want to break down some of the key concepts to what appears to be a very simple track in relation to some of the other tracks that I will be covering in future videos. However, some of the more advanced techniques at play in Redout apply specifically well to this track because of its simplicity. So in order to make that jump from a top 10 to a top 5, or from a top 5 to a world record time, we need to understand some of the nuances of strafing, steering, bouncing, and rolling. So, to start this track, I want to bring this video back to right here as we approach the jump. So, in terms of perspective, this is one of the simpler cuts in the game, but it can still confuse certain players as to where we should approach a landing. In your preparation lap, which is this one, for your world record or time trial attempt, I recommend, if you can see my mouse here, that we approach a wall bounce and a landing somewhere along the back corner of this left-hand turn where you see this mix of palm trees in the background. By doing this, once we land and once we create a little bit of a straightaway, we have quite a bit of distance here to gain speed and give ourselves the maximum opportunity to get a good start. So, in this track, I'm able to create that boost, build up that speed. Now, notice that I boosted a little bit early relative to the start of the track. The reason for this is by the time we get halfway through the track, after our major left-hand hairpin, I want to be able to boost immediately. So given the track, given the ship selection, which is Sulha AP, we know that we have a very slow energy recharge. So if I can boost a little bit early, while still building up a good amount of speed. You see here 1024. That allows me to carry my speed into this initial chicane without using too much boost too late in the pattern. So by the time I get over to here, I'm able to boost immediately off the left hairpin. So let's review some other things. As I take this first turn, I want to try to make this as simplistic an angle as possible. So I don't want to have to turn left and turn right with any degree of sharpness. I'm trying to keep this very smooth. So watch how I basically stay straight where you could draw a line in my trajectory right here where my mouse is. Now there is a very slight mishap here as I very gently bump the corner. You can see it right there. This happens to be the kind of bounce that doesn't really affect my speed, aside from maybe changing my orientation of ship. So I got away with a small mistake here, but I believe it did reflect in my timer, which you can see right there is 0.33 behind. It is important to note that the timer in Redout, assuming we're playing at 60 frames per second, operates 1 frame every 0.0167 milliseconds. So your increments of time that you'll either gain speed or lose speed, in my experience, will tend to be following those specific increments. So if I didn't bounce that turn incorrectly, I might be at a 0.016 instead of a 0.033. You might say, well, why are you getting so technical? Well, if you consider that this lap is 4 frames away from a world record, you can understand why understanding the nuances of timing is so important. Now, that part you just watched there is my next set of positions that I want to achieve on this track. So, coming off of the loop, I want to try and hug pretty closely to the left barrier as I move through this initial loop, which then allows me to draw a pretty straight line here to just pass through that right barrier. Look how close we got there. Just past that right barrier into our first major wall bounce. Now, in my testing, if we bounce a little bit later, it actually slows you down because the slope of the barrier doesn't move with the gradient of your turn. So it's important that we bounce in a way that allows us to maintain forward momentum. Now this turn coming up is probably the most important in the entire track for making or breaking your lap. And that is this nasty left hand hairpin. So you might say to yourself, well, that doesn't look so nasty, it looks like a relatively smooth turn. However, there are a couple of things to consider. So if you look at where my ship is positioned right now on the track, I am closer to the left side of the track, but then the turn has to go left. So right now, I'm not in a great position to take the apex of this turn. So right there, you see how I had to slightly turn to the right and then create my strafe left, hug the apex, move through the turn. If you are able to take this segment and bounce where your ship will end up a little more to the right to begin with, so let's say I was more near the center line, well now I'd be able to drive straight and then slope left instead of having to make that little counter adjustment. And I believe that might be the difference in the world record versus what I'm showing you here. Now, to take this turn most efficiently, we want to hug, and then we want to apply a slight wall bounce on the right side. Now, unfortunately, this program does not allow me to play the audio in analysis mode, but if you watch the lap, if you go back in the YouTube video and watch the actual lap, you'll hear that it's a very, very light, delicate wall bounce, and the sound that it makes reflects that. It's not a grind. If you slam the wall, or if you grind the wall, you're going to lose so much speed coming into this next part of the left-hander that your lap is gone. So, the way I approach wall bounce is like this, where you can bounce and the track still moves further out away from you, is what I call a parallel wall bounce. So instead of targeting the back corner of the ship in a bounce where I have to change direction, let's say the turn was going this way, what I'm going to do in this lap is try to bounce at the side and continue along a straighter path. Same thing applies once I hit this one. Yes, it did hit back corner, but I'm not trying to rotate the ship into it. So So if you remember my video last week in Roaring Waters, that final wall bounce where I braked, shifted my ship, I was trying to hit the back corner, not so much here. Now if you do this properly, and we get these double wall bounces with a smooth curve, you're in position to now boost right off of that second bounce, which maximizes the length of time that we're traveling at high speeds. So holding above 1,300 miles an hour this entire loop. That was another one of those similar wall bounces you just saw there. Tough thing about this turn is there is a very narrow gap between cutting it very closely like I did here and cutting it wider, keeping a little bit more speed, but then potentially hitting the wall more times. So I got away on this lap with a single bounce. On some of the other videos, you'll hear people double, triple, even quadruple bouncing that wall because they didn't cut the turn short enough. At the same time, if you cut it too short, you'll lose speed. So that's kind of one of those trial and error balancing acts. Now, this part here, I don't want you to focus on so much just yet, because I have a technique to show you that will completely transform the way you approach time trials in Redout. So I'm taking this left turn into a straightaway, and I want you to observe the orientation of my ship. Let's play it. Take a look at this. Now, am I going straight? Well, the direction of my ship would appear to be traveling in a straight line. So the momentum of the ship is carrying forwards. But look at the actual ship face. I'm pointed at the left wall. So what I'm doing is a technique called counter strafing on a straightaway. So a few years ago, to back up, a few players in the Redout Discord community figured out that strafing has a natural speed. So if you were to just hold strafe, move sideways, your ship could travel anywhere between 22, 26, 28 kilometers per hour. But what we figured out is that that speed can be additive on top of the ship's traditional top speed if you strafe sideways while traveling in a straight line. So watch how I approach this turn. Right about here would be straight. Now watch that slight angle. Now I'm turning to the left. And this takes a lot of practice and a lot of repetition to be able to hold a counter strafe while traveling straight. But I stress this because if you learn this technique, you will go anywhere from 20 to 30 to sometimes 40 kilometers per hour faster on every straightaway in the game. That allows you to maintain this kind of angle. Now, watch what I do here. After I contact this wall, most people would attempt to drive straight, seeing that this really isn't a straightaway. But I found something interesting about this wall bounce. Coming up ahead. If I initiate a left counter strafe, see how my ship now draw an arrow from the front, it's pointed to the right side. So I'm strafing to the left while driving straight. I hold this, and as I go over the jump, I'm now going to perform a semicircle with my control stick, or if you're using a keyboard. Basically, I'm going to turn the vehicle slowly to the left while pitching slightly up. This allows me to catch very closely to that kill plane. So see the kill plane here, but look at it here. I'm able to sweep the kill plane and bounce pretty lightly along this wall, where I am at 700 plus moving into this left turn. You might say, well, if you're holding left strafe, performing that counter movement, why did I switch back to a right strafe movement coming through the straightaway? And that is because I am setting myself up for the final jump, where I'll eventually have to swivel the ship all the way to the left before that final exit towards the finish line. So my guide point in this turn is one lone tree. See this tree right here? Whereas before we talked about landing further back and allowing the ship more time to gain speed before your start, now I want to try and cut as closely as possible to that finishing kill plane. So look at that. I'm nearly at the kill plane. I get a swift bounce, and then I try to hug real closely to the left side to keep my ship as straight as possible, moving through the finish. So let's watch that one more time. Watch how in real speed all of these things happen. A counter strafe, I sweep across, land very softly, and now I'm holding that straight line in that right counter strafe. Now look at the tree. See the tree right there? And I'm looking just beneath the tree to bounce that wall and drive straight. So if I look at what I could have done better in this lap in real time, as I pointed out, there is an incidental wall bounce right there that could be avoided. It probably saves 16 milliseconds. Now, not having to counter strafe there to get to the right side of the track would allow me to take that turn more tightly. That could be another frame. That turn may have been cut a little too soon. One frame there. And the quality that you're able to hold this straight line, land on the track after the big jump, and boost towards the finish would probably be that last frame to give you a world record. Thank you so much everyone for watching today's video. If you have any questions, please reach out to me, and I look forward to bringing you more advanced strategies in the future. Thank you.